Hey everybody, it is Brian Nemhauser, and we're live with Real Hawk Talk. We're on our bi-weekly schedule for the off season every Wednesday night at 7. Sorry, that's not bi-weekly, folks. Bi-weekly would be every other Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. Glad to see you. And while I've got you, if you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe. If you're listening to this, go up to SoundCloud, go to Hawk Blogger, subscribe there. Go to youtube.com/hawkblogger. This is why I do a live show, folks. youtube.com/hawkblogger to subscribe there. You'll get notified anytime we're going to go live, because who knows? We might have something we just want to talk about, and you won't know it's happening unless you're subscribed. So I am Brian Nemhauser. I am one of four, and only a small fraction of that. So let me introduce the other guys. Nathan Ernst, at NathanE11 on Twitter. Welcome back, Nathan.
Thanks for having me again.
And then I want to say that, I decided Nathan kind of inspired me. I wanted to lose a little on the top. So I think we're brothers united there. And then Jeff, at Real Jeff Simmons, in the polar vortex. How you doing, man?
I'm cold, man. It's bad temperatures out here. Remember that Minnesota playoff game a couple years ago? That's what it felt like to be outside today. You can see me in my jacket. I'm still freezing in my apartment. I barely left the house.
Did you try hitting anyone, like Cam Chancellor or anything like that in that situation?
I tried. It didn't go so well. I'm built a little differently than Cam, right?
I can't imagine. Like, we've all probably played snow or cold football, winter football, and man, I don't know how they do it. Speaking of cold, Evan, how cold is it around you?
It is so funny that you asked that. It is a chilly 63 degrees right now, and I saw a cloud for the first time in Phoenix today, ever since living here for the past month. First time I saw a cloud. And let me tell you, I had to put on pants, a sweatshirt, a long sleeve shirt, and even turned on my fireplace briefly. So Jeff and I are equally struggling.
That sounds like hell to me. Like,
it
literally.
Hell. It is hell.
And Evan, like, I'm pretty sure you've been struggling without Matador nachos, but I'm kind of curious, how much caloric balance has there been with an In-N-Out burger within like a walk of you?
Is there a way to determine if my wife is listening to this podcast right now?
I think it's highly unlikely.
Highly unlikely? Okay. I had 4 visits to In-N-Out in the past 7 days.
Oh, man.
Which equals,
Nathan is severely disappointed.
Which equals about doubles.
I'm impressed, I guess, more than anything. I don't know. That's a lot.
Yeah. I got to get my ass back in gear before, my wife comes into town tomorrow.
Do you need counseling? Because that honestly sounds a little bit suicidal. Like you want your life to end sooner.
This is a healthy situation, though. So
okay, as long as it brings you joy, dude. And we've got an awesome show. We're going to be talking about the Super Bowl because shockingly, there seems to be quite a bit of debate about who Seahawks fans should cheer for, and we're going to settle that debate here tonight, once and for all. We will also talk about a great article that Evan wrote about the offseason, and there are a lot of tough choices for the Seahawks to make. He's going to walk us through a few of those. We'll talk about that. And we're also going to welcome a guest. Jayson Jenks of The Athletic wrote a fantastic piece on really the oral history of the NFC Championship victory over the Packers. And so as soon as Jayson joins on, we'll tackle his topic. Until then, Jeff, where should we go?
I think we should start with the Super Bowl. It is Super Bowl week. I think we were all hoping for Saints Chiefs. Is that correct? Anyone else think differently?
I was going Rams Chief to recreate that Monday Night Football game, but Saints Chief would have been just fine.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Anything that did involve Brady versus McVay and Goff and having to hear about those two storylines all week. But if you follow Evan on Twitter, and I assume most of our listeners do, Evan believes, which I think is a very representative view of Seahawks Twitter, that you have to be out of your mind to cheer for the Rams. Seahawks maybe biggest division rival right now as they're trying to reclaim the top spot. I know people hate Brady for obvious reasons. Brady's won so many times. They beat the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. Evan looks like his head's ready to pop off. So we'll start with you on this. Why are you so insistent about this?
It blows my mind. Remember like the Seahawks 49ers rivalry, that brute rivalry we had like 3 to 4 years ago? Like I cannot fathom myself like rooting for the Niners in the Super Bowl. Like, remember when the Niners played the Ravens? You weren't rooting for the Niners. Like, just stop this whole. Okay. You know, I'm gonna set my argument right here. Okay. Number one, I hate the Patriots. Nobody on this podcast, nobody in Seahawks world doesn't hate the Patriots. I get it. We hate the Patriots. I hate Tom Brady. I hate the Patriots. Okay, that's established. I hate the Rams a lot more. They're a divisional rival. I don't root any success upon them ever. I hope Sean McVay ends his coaching career as a failure. I hope the Rams continue to be a failure as an organization. What kind of actually blows my mind is like, yes, we hate the Rams, or yes, we hate the Patriots as Seahawks fans, but like, I keep hearing this notion that the Pats stole the Super Bowl from the Seahawks. And I know everybody hates bringing that up, but I think that is so completely untrue. The Seahawks they gifted that Super Bowl to the Patriots on a silver platter. Like they tied it up and gift wrapped it to them. Like I just don't think it's true that they stole it from us at all. So not only that, Tom Brady has already cemented his legacy, winning 5 Super Bowls. He's the greatest of all time. I don't think there's too much debate about that, but that's the overwhelming majority agrees with that. If Brady gets one more ring, the narrative does not change with Tom Brady. Tom Brady is the GOAT either if he loses or if he gets another ring. But if the Rams get a ring, we as Seahawks fans are going to be hearing so much shit for the next whatever bazillion years until the Seahawks reestablish their dominance over the Rams. Are you any Seahawks fan that is rooting for the Rams on Sunday, are you telling me you're prepared to hear Rams fans say, oh, Jared Goff has just as many Super Bowl rings as Russell Wilson? That is shit I cannot handle. That will drive me emotionally insane, psychologically insane. I cannot handle that. So,
Evan, what Ram fans are you talking about?
The next Rams fan, the next Rams fan I hear from will be the first.
Okay, they are hiding. They are ready to come out of their lair. They are hiding in their cave, and they are ready to pounce if they win the Super Bowl. So that is my 2-part argument for why we should root for the Patriots. Is because guess what? The uncomfortable truth is, yes, we can hate the Patriots as Seahawks fans, but they haven't exactly done anything to us that is like not in the fair realm of, like fair play or something like that. The Rams have been a thorn in our side for years, and they're a divisional rival. The Patriots are not a divisional rival. They're hateable, sure, but root for the Patriots.
What about you, Brian? Where do you stand on this?
For different reasons. I'm with Evan. I was shocked when I ran a poll on Twitter asking this question before the championship games happened, and I said, if this was theoretically the matchup, who would you cheer for? Like 70% said they would cheer for the Rams. I was like totally shocked. I think it was 62%, but like whatever. It was the majority and the healthy majority. And it just blows my mind that that's where people's allegiances go. A lot of people were referencing the Cheatriots, like that they're cheaters. And I'm like, I don't care that they taped a Jets practice. Jason is saving us just time. We will come back to this topic in just a moment.
Before Nathan was about to chime in.
Yeah. There's a lot to say. Jason, are you able to hear us? We see your figure. Maybe we're not quite there yet. Technical difficulties. I've been shooting messages back and forth with Jason. These poor guys trying to join these Google Hangouts. Now, I figured Jason was young enough that I didn't have to give him a lot of instructions for how Google Hangouts would work. Most of the time we have guests on here, I have to go into great detail because it's like technology craziness. But man, Jason's like millennial. I would just expect this like.
Hey Brian, you got a home phone you can connect him through on?
Dude, I am telling you,
you do have a home phone, don't you?
Cell dead zone in our house.
Oh, switch carriers. A home. Okay, we won't get on this.
I'm very happy to have my company pay for my wireless bill. So, Jason, if you're able to hear us, you might want to try hanging up and joining back in. So, I guess my reasoning for not wanting the Rams to win is I think it's bad for the Seahawks. I don't think it's huge major difference, but I think that there's a lot of history of what happens when Super Bowl winners, how they fare in years following, and how Super Bowl losers fare in years following. And there's not a lot of good history for teams that lose the Super Bowl. It's pretty dreadful, and I want dreadful for the Rams. I also don't want free agents to want to sign with the Rams, or free agents that they have to give them better deals to stay with the Rams. And I think that's what happens when you win a Super Bowl. You start getting veterans who are willing to sacrifice for you. Jason, I see you've tried joining again. Can you hear us now? Can we hear you now? Wow. This is maybe the best interview we've done on the show. We get to make all the points. Jeff, Nathan, why don't you take over? I'm going to try to talk with Jason on a separate line.
All right, Nathan, I feel like you have a different perspective on this.
I mean, I do in that I don't care. I think that's maybe the right answer. If you're going into this game rooting for anyone, I don't really get it. The Patriots are the evil empire. The Patriots did cheat a bunch, and I don't really care too much about that, but it was kind of crappy. And they beat the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. So yeah, I don't really have a strong feeling here. There's a lot of things that will potentially light up my mentions in ways that I'm not excited about. So I definitely don't want like Todd Gurley to go off or any kind of a run-based offense to really dominate the game. That would
wait a second
for me for a bit.
Pause for a second, because I love that. I love that. Like, let's all acknowledge that we've got some priors, and like there's a little bit like you kind of cheer to make sure you don't have to like defend them all the time. And I think
yeah. And priors are definitely part of it, but also like literally my mentions will be miserable if there's some fluky thing or some stupid thing. And so I just don't even want to deal with it. So that's a big, motivator for me in this and who I'm rooting for. I don't have the same hate for the Rams that it sounds like Evan and other people do. Like, if this was the Niners, it'd be very different for me. I still hold a lot of dislike for them, and I think Jed York is crappy, trashy owner, and so I would not root for them. Though I do like Kyle Shanahan, which is also part of why I like the Rams. Like, this McVay thing is fun. It sucks that he's in our division and that he's so good, but it's fun. And so, I don't know. Long term, if Jared Goff having as many rings is a problem, then like the Seahawks have other problems, right? Like that'll either be something that fixes itself or it just isn't an issue. So I don't have a strong feeling on this one way or the other.
What if it were the Cardinals?
See, that's an interesting one because I actually still really hate the Cardinals, but because of people who aren't there anymore. Namely Bruce Arians, the new sheriff in town. I would never, ever, ever root for Bruce Arians. If somehow Bruce Arians, there's no scenario where Tampa or the Cardinals play the Niners in the Super Bowl, but if that was an NFC Championship game or something, I think Bruce Arians is the guy I would root for the least. Just because they didn't even have they won some games here and stuff, and that was annoying, but Bruce Arians was the whole new sheriff in town and all that crap was very annoying.
Well, it's funny. I feel like I don't know about you, Jeff, but like the Cardinals, I never really gave a crap about Arians that much one way or another. I thought he was kind of obnoxious, but I love Larry Fitzgerald. I'm a huge fan of, and so like it's hard for me to not cheer for him. In general, I would have been happy for him to win a ring. And Arizona, for me, most of the time, it's not about the players it's usually about
Jim
the fan
Harbaugh?
base. No, Jim Harbaugh, yeah, like definitely. But like Arizona Cardinals fans, like they are like the most pitiful franchise in history. Like they don't have anything to brag about, and you kind of feel for them. The Rams are not much better. So,
who did you root for in the Steelers Cardinals Super Bowl?
I didn't watch it. I didn't give a shit.
Again,
about
that's the
that
right
Super
answer.
Bowl.
Yeah,
I didn't care at all. Jason, can we hear you? Jason keeps telling me that he can hear us and see himself.
Is his microphone turned on?
I don't know, man.
Evan, who did you root for in the Cardinals Steelers Super Bowl? I think I know the answer on this one, but what?
My death.
No, but you had to. Did you pick someone? Did you root? No.
Considering I was, I believe, 13 years old or 14 years old. I don't even remember what my beliefs were at the moment. I definitely wasn't rooting for the Steelers. I can tell you that. Like
this was before Seattle won their first Super Bowl, so you weren't actually a fan yet, right?
Yeah, I became a fan in 2016. So, no, I everybody knows I hate the Steelers with like a burning passion, just because that was the first football game I ever watched. Like my first football game was that Seahawks Steelers Super Bowl, and I'll never forget going to a Super Bowl party and Seahawks fans just like genuinely crying like were around me, and it was just this overwhelmingly depressing experience. But to answer your question, if it was today, if that game is today, I'm rooting for the Cardinals.
If the game was today, I'd be in the same place. At the time, I felt very strongly about rooting for the Steelers because Seattle still hadn't won one. And so Seattle would have been one less franchise with Seattle that hadn't had a ring. And that was very important to me. And that the Cardinals in the division and all that would have, separated themselves in that way. That was very important to me. But if it was today, I probably would root for the Cardinals too. Larry Fitzgerald being a big part of that.
Yeah.
At that point, I was with Nathan. I just thought Seattle was never going to win one, and they had that one taken away from them.
And I wanted company.
Now, if you told me like 2013 Jim Harbaugh Niners versus current Steelers, I would have no idea what I'd do in that situation.
It's got to be the Steelers, right?
Hell no! I fucking hate the Steelers.
I know, but I think the Harbaugh Niners are my least favorite team ever.
Yeah. I think
I respected the hell out of them, but
I just hate them both so much.
Well, so who of you are old enough and been Nathan or Evan? You're out of this question. So when the Rams actually were Super Bowl contenders and winning, like greatest show on turf, late '90s, early 2000, and were you like? I kind of remember vaguely by the time I got onto Twitter in like 2008 or 2009, maybe there were some Rams fans left over, but like, I don't know. Like, I can't even remember because I vaguely recall Rams fans being obnoxious back then, but I don't even know where that would have been because it wouldn't have been Twitter. So like,
I don't remember the Rams fans, but Seattle and St. Louis at the time, the Rams had a really good rivalry there in the Holmgren years. There was a year that, Seattle lost to the Rams twice and then played them in the wild card round, I think it was, and lost to them in that game of all things, a Bobby Ingram drop in the end zone, which was, 1 in a million type deal and stuff like that. And there was a Nate Burleson punt return in a home game. I think that might have been, I think it was one of those where the Rams won like a bunch in a row and then just it flipped on a dime, and then all of a sudden the Seahawks won a bunch in a row. But for a while there, that was a really good rivalry. If this was like 10 years ago, I would feel different about this. I'd feel more like I do about the Niners for the Rams. But that's been so long now.
Holy crap. He figured out technology. Jason. Welcome to the show, dude.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Something's up with my computer, so I had to go to the phone. Should have done it earlier.
Man, you set a record for the most eager and persistent guest we've had. Like most folks would have like screw you guys. I'm going to go watch Netflix. But
I thought about it. Trust me.
Let me give you a better introduction than that. For folks that don't know Jayson, shame on you. He is a fantastic journalist. Actually, I first came to know about Jayson when he joined the Seattle Times as a beat writer. And I don't remember exactly the years. You'll fill me in on those, Jayson.
The Super Bowl year.
Yeah. That's right. So that's the problem, dude. You left, and look what's happened. So, Jayson I am still a subscriber to the Seattle Times. I read the paper every morning, and I always look for Jayson's articles. Not your typical articles, does not just regurgitate quotes and press conferences, but actually spends time with players and coaches and people across the league to have some really interesting insights and angles on the game that we love and the team that we love. So he has now moved on and writes for The Athletic. And we're going to talk to you today about an article you wrote around one of the best games in the history of the Seahawks, the 2015 NFC Championship. Well,
which
technically it was in 2015, but
it always gets me. Yeah, I hate that.
Yeah. So, welcome, Jayson.
Thank you for the very kind words.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what got you started on this article, and the timing is appropriate.
Yeah, so actually before the season I did an oral history on the 49ers Seahawks NFC Championship game the year before, because that was one of the best live sporting events I've ever seen. And that game was just so epic that I wanted to do something on it, just kind of because I thought it would be fun to relive it. And when I did that, a bunch of the guys I talked to, first of all, they couldn't remember which one was which and all that kind of stuff. But they also, a bunch of them had really told me that they actually remembered the Packers game better, that game was the one that stood out to them far better. So when I was doing that, I kind of just kept that in the back of my head. And when the season ended this year, I was like, it seems like a good time as any with kind of the downtime in the offseason just to go back and look at that game. And so I just called as many guys as I could in the time span I could. And the stories that those guys told were pretty incredible. And the little moments that happened in that game is something that I think even those guys are amazed by, even after all the games that they played and the crazy stuff they saw over the years.
Yeah, what's maybe the top thing, that one or two things maybe that you learned writing this article that you didn't know before you started?
So one of them was Luke Wilson talking about the 2-point conversion. And first of all, he wasn't even a pass receiver on that play at all. He wasn't supposed to be. He was supposed to kind of block Russell's backside, and he had turned around for a split second and he thought he saw Russell about to do one of his like banana spins back to kind of start going the other way. And so he was like, oh, okay, well, he's coming my way. So he took off towards the corner, turned around, saw Russell hadn't actually done that, and thought, oh, crap, like I'm going to get my butt chewed out for this in film. And Russell just chucks the ball up, and everyone on that play, he said, gives Clinton Dix crap for just like basically not making a play when it looked like he was right there. And Luke said, it's the craziest thing when he goes, I swear the final like 8-10 feet that ball was falling, it moved like 5 feet. And he goes, if you watch, like I don't catch it cleanly because it looks like the ball is going to come down like right on top of us. And at the last second, like the wind caught it or whatever, and it moved on me and like totally surprised him and totally surprised me. And I thought that was really interesting. And when I went back and like watched the video in slow motion, like maybe it's just my eyes, but it sure looks like you can see the ball moving like that. So I thought that was pretty crazy.
Man, that was maybe the most unlikely play. I guess up there would have to be the onside kick, but yep. That happens time to time. That 2-point conversion had no business happening at all.
That play was a total disaster. It was supposed to be like a quick hit to Baldwin, and he wasn't open, and Luke wasn't a receiver. And there's almost none of the offensive guys I talked to thought that Russell had any clue that Luke was there or could have possibly seen him. he just kind of like chucked it up and threw it. I mean, it was just one of those things that like nothing about that play made any sense, and yet it worked and came together. And had they not got that play, they would have lost the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, who knows? Actually, that game,
yeah,
but everything seemed to be falling.
That's a good point.
Going their way at that point. Oral history, as a article type, so someone who loves writing and journalism in general, like it's not the most common. I mean, what has you interested in that format?
I think it's just a really cool way to tell a lot of perspectives about something that like a season or a game or something where people all are experiencing it in a completely different way. And I find it really hard to like write, for me at least, like a coherent story with all those different viewpoints. And so in oral history, it's kind of like my job is to do the hard work of interviewing those is to just do the easy work of interviewing those guys and like listening to their stories. And I just like stringing it together like that, almost kind of like a documentary, I guess is the best way to think of it. And sort of just letting their words and their experience tell the story of the game. And I think more than anything, like it allows, I hope, fans and people who remember the game really fondly and probably remember it better than the players do, frankly, to like relive kind of where they were and what they were feeling and all that kind of stuff. So it's just something when there's so many viewpoints in a game, and so, you've got like John Ryan's involved in the fake field goal, but he's not involved at all in the 2-point conversion, and Luke Wilson's involved in the 2-point conversion, but he's not involved at all in like the defense. I just think it's a really cool way to hear from a lot of different people.
I wasn't surprised that Wilson and Ryan, you just mentioned, those quotes were great, but I was surprised how good Tony McDaniel's quotes.
Yeah, he was awesome, wasn't he?
Yeah, like did anyone else jump off the page to you? Like his quotes to me were the most surprising.
Not really. Maybe it's because I've interviewed all those guys like quite a bit. I haven't interviewed Tony a ton. I've interviewed him a handful of times. But all the other guys I'd interviewed enough that I kind of like expected it. Like you said, John Ryan, like he's kind of my go-to reliable for little like light humor and stuff like that. I knew he'd be pretty good. But yeah, I talked to Tony for like 25 minutes. I got off the phone. I was like, holy cow, like that was really, really good. And he was really funny and honest. And he was like one of the few guys that was not willing to admit like, oh yeah, I knew we were going to come back. Of course we were going to come back. He was like, nah, I was thinking of going to Vegas and flying to Miami and like getting drunk. And so I didn't have to feel this way, which I was like, all right, I appreciate your honesty.
Man, go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say, was there anyone you really wanted to speak to, but you didn't get the chance to?
Like for something like this, I mean, the story's already like ridiculously long. I think it's like 4,000 some words long. So at some point, like I got enough stuff that I was like, if I do, like I could do 10,000 words, but I think 4,000 is plenty for it. And I wasn't trying to do like the completely definitive thing. I wanted to kind of let people relive it. Obviously Russell would have been cool, but he's pretty hard to get. Who else did I wanted to talk to Hauschka, but I couldn't get a hold of him.
Don't you think you could have just put Russell's quotes in there without talking to him?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I was sort of just kind of being generous because he's the quarterback involved in so much stuff, but I don't think he would have probably said something particularly interesting, I guess. But no, I would have loved to talk to, honestly, Earl and Richard would have been the two. If I could have talked to any two, it would have been Earl and Richard, because they played so hurt that game. And it's actually really like as an aside, I had reached out to Dan Quinn to see if he wanted to told him what I was kind of doing. I said, hey, like no pressure at all. I haven't really kept in touch with Dan since he left here very much at all. And I was like, no pressure. I'm just doing this. I thought I would reach out. And he was like, no, I can help you out. And I was like, you sure? And he's like, yeah, I'm in Hawaii. I'll call you at this time. And he called me, and he basically just like called, I'm 100% sure, just because he wanted to make sure that like people knew, I mean, heroic's a little bit of an overstatement, but I guess how gutsy Earl and Richard's performance was that day with how injured those guys were and how much he really respected that, which I thought said a whole lot about how he viewed those guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's Super Bowl season, as everybody knows, and that storyline is one that we'll just never get told really fully nationally. It'll never really be part of the lore that even that Super Bowl that followed that game, Earl and Richard were in no position to be playing. Cam then got hurt the minute before. Yeah, I mean that group should not have been out on the field that day, and still came within a fateful play of winning back-to-back Super Bowls. So crazy story.
Yeah, it really is.
I'm curious, like as I said, I've always admired your writing, and I'm interested if there's writers out there that you admire and that you follow and watch what they're doing.
Yeah, tons of people. I love Wright Thompson at ESPN. I love Chris Ballard at Sports Illustrated. I love Eli Saslaw at the Washington Post. Lee Jenkins. Well, gosh, Lee Jenkins isn't even a writer anymore. He now works for the Clippers, which is crazy. But I always loved Lee Jenkins. Tom Junod at Esquire. There's so many people. Like, honestly, I'm a huge writing nerd. This is what I love to do. This is the only thing I'm really good at. And so I like, as much as I have fun with it, I like kind of the craft of it, I guess, like studying it and why something might work and something might not work, why something else might not work, or how people do their stuff. So I pretty much read everything I can, and I try to actually read like more. I try to read stuff that's not sports related as much as I can, which I do a lot just to have kind of a different perspective than the sports field. But those are the sports people I'm really into.
You know, being at the Athletic, you are exposed to folks like Ben Baldwin, who super into analytics, and there's a lot of analytics rising in football right now. You've always struck me as someone who's more on the feature writing side, more on the person story. Curious if analytics are making your job, if they're affecting your approach to writing at all.
No, not at all. Because like I'm just a believer. I'm a big believer that there's like so many ways to write about sports that like, and it's actually what I mean, not to promote the brand here, but there's so many different ways to cover the Seahawks. And I think it's one of the cool things about the Athletic is that you can get someone like Ben Baldwin who is writing about analytics, or someone like Sam Gold, who's writing about who's looking at like tape and film and trying to do stuff that way. And then you can get someone like me or Michael Sean, or I guess, but more like me, who's like, you know, maybe not really interested in that kind of stuff, but really is interested in sort of the personal story side of things. And I don't think either of them are right or wrong. I mean, I'm not opposed to analytics at all. Like, it's not something that I'm anti by any means. It's just not something that I'm ever going to probably be like I'm never going to be smart enough like Ben or those guys to like really go in and study that stuff. I read what they have to say, and I'm always like, I could not do that or write that. But yeah, the thing I'm just kind of like most interested in is the human side. And to be honest, that took me like a really long time to kind of feel comfortable with and figure out. I mean, there are so many different people in so many different fields in sports media that do things their own way. And for a long time, I kind of wanted to try to do it all and please everyone. And I just kind of had to realize like, this is what I'm interested in. It's what I really like. And so I just have to kind of stay true to that.
Nathan.
Oh, sorry. Did I not mute myself? I was trying to.
That was our professional throw to Nathan.
That was me messing up my cough button.
Yes.
I do have a question, though. I mean, you talked about Dan Quinn talking about the heroics of Earl and Sherman. Did you get anything? There's so many plays that kind of fall by the wayside with that game because there were just so many crazy plays. Sherm's tackle on that last drive for the Packers with his injured shoulder taking down, I think, Jordy Nelson, is one of my favorites. Did you get anything interesting on that, or what other?
Was the exact play that Quinn talked about.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was the exact play that he highlighted. One from Earl and one from Richard. One from Earl. The Earl one wasn't quite as specific, but it was basically after Earl. You know, Earl went to the locker room that game, and Dan said that, you know, like they knew in the press box that it was pretty significant. And he said within whatever it was, 10 plays of Earl coming back out, Earl comes flying downhill to like make a tackle. And he said most guys like would not go in with their injured shoulder, or they'd find some other way. And he said Earl went right in with like let in with his shoulder to make the play really stuck. The third one was the exact play that you mentioned, that he said that like Richard had no choice but to like lean in with that injured arm. And he said like Richard made the play, and he said I like those are the two plays that really, really stuck out to him of all the crazy things. Like I thought it was really interesting that those two are the ones that he talked about right away.
That's pretty cool. Were there other stuff that kind of hit the cutting floor that you would have liked to include if you could have gone to the 10,000 words?
There wasn't a whole bunch of like interesting. I mean, I loved that Baldwin said him and Jermaine are like such. They're not polar opposites, but they're pretty different and really good friends, but pretty different in personality. And I've talked with them with them over the years about that. And he said after the game ended, he goes, it was so funny looking back because it showed how different they were. He's like, Jermaine was crying and I'm just like screaming like a lunatic. And I thought that was pretty funny. And then I actually got like a text from someone in the Seahawks who said that they missed the onside kick because they were getting ready to leave and they were taking a piss, and they like heard the crowd roar and go crazy and were like, oh crap, like what's happening, and went running back out there. So I didn't learn that till after the story came out, but I thought that was pretty funny.
How do you miss the onside kick? Like the game is like really in the balance at that point. Wow.
I know. Trust me.
Sometimes you got to go, man. Like,
I guess
we've all been there. Was that the game? Like, I'm trying to remember. Was that the game that afterwards Baldwin went off on the reporters?
Yep.
Did you talk to him about that at all? And
yeah, I did. I actually forgotten that, and he brought that up. Because there was so many. I mean, that was the game I'd kind of forgotten too. That was the game Michael Bennett rode the police officer's bike around the field. But yeah, I'd forgotten that, and Baldwin was like talking about the end. We were talking about the end of the game, and he brought that up. He's like, I have really no idea what I said. He's like, I don't know if I was cussing or if I wasn't. He's like, I don't really remember what I said, and I don't really know why I did it. I was just like so fired up and like adrenaline rush from the game that he's like, I just like kind of went crazy, which is pretty awesome. So, and I wasn't even down there for that. I had no idea that even happened, like that he went off like that. But yeah, that was that game.
Does that mean that like we need to have some dude from Stanford on the Seahawks every time we win an NFC Championship to yell at reporters? Is that like
I was gonna say,
is that a requirement?
I think like a Stanford guy with a big chip on his shoulder is like they'll have to just like bring someone in next time that happens if they don't have someone on the team just to keep the tradition going.
Jayson, we've kept you on for a while. This has been really great. Last question I'd ask you is, going into this off season, what are the storylines you're going to be following, and what has your interest?
That's a really good question. I'll leave I'm not as like, I was never super connected, but I'm not as like dialed in with the day-to-day by any means as I was when I was kind of like more traditionally on the beat. All I know is I would love to do something on the Griffin brothers. I've been trying to do that for quite a while. So that's like very high on my list. And I'd love to do something big on Russell Wilson, but I've got a lot of months ahead of me, but those are kind of like my two off-season goals. So like I said, as far as the like free agency stuff and things like that, I'm probably the worst person to ask for that stuff right now, because you guys would know a hell of a lot more than I would. But those are the two stories that I'd really like to tell.
All right, well, dude, be careful when you do the Griffin brothers story, because they're definitely going to try to pull a fast one on you, and you're going to think you're interviewing one of them, and it'll be the other, and
I dealt with the Morris twins at KU, Marcus and Markieff Morris, and they would legit do that, and they thought it was the funniest thing in the world. So I've been trained.
All twins do that.
Yep.
Well, hey, Jayson, awesome job. It's great reading your stuff. Tell folks where else they can find you at The Athletic online.
Yeah, at theathletic.com. Come check us out. You can get all sorts of. We have national stuff, local stuff, and it's not too expensive, so you should come give us a try.
Good. Hey, support good journalism, folks. There's not a lot out there, and some of them are over there. So thanks for coming on, Jayson, and hopefully we can have you back again.
Hey, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Have a good night.
All right, take care.
You too.
Bye. That was Jayson Jenks talking to us about his article and overcoming incredible adversity of his own. That was quite the comeback to make it onto the show. It almost rivals the 2014-15 NFC Championship. Where were we, guys? Do we want to revisit that at all? Is it time to move on?
I think we can move on. unless Evan wants to have a rebuttal about why we should really not root for the Rams, but
no.
I have one point to make that I didn't get to, and this is a little bit out there, but just to show like the razor's edge of how the victor gets to write history. You are a Patriots comeback from 28-3, a touchdown from the 1-yard line by the Seahawks, and a 2005, maybe not a properly refereed game, although I never blame a game on a ref, but you're 3 very minor changes away from the Seahawks and Tom Brady having the same amount of Super Bowls. Like,
say that.
I'm just saying, like, the Patriots have not dominated teams in the Super Bowl in general. Now, we all consider them a dynasty for good reason. They've won a ton, and they've been to a number, more than that. But it's a razor's edge. I mean, a few of those games go a different way. Even the last 2, like the 28-3 and the Seahawks one, even just that, which is not that crazy to say that could have been different. You're talking about 2 Super Bowls for the Seahawks and 3 for Brady and Belichick. And
there's the Tuck rule too.
The Tuck rule. I mean, yeah, like there's legitimate pieces out there that, I mean, history will never look back and have those nuances, but it's just an amazing, minutia that ends up being the way these stories get told.
You can play that same game with both of the Giants losses, though, for the Patriots. So
you can.
Yeah, and I think even if they had not won a single Super Bowl, I mean, the Bills are kind of the counter to this, right? Because nobody really looks back and thinks of that Bills team for anything except for failure. But just getting to the Super Bowl as many times as they have, it's unreal.
Yeah, 4 straight, right?
Yeah. But who knows if they lose, if they don't win some of those early, then they had a little stretch there. How does that change with Belichick? Do people get antsy if you're the guy that can't get over the hump and then you have a little bit of a dry spell? It's always interesting to think about.
Well, that was the storyline going into the Seahawks matchup. They had not won a Super Bowl since 2004.
Yep.
And the up until the very last play, that was the talk, because Jermaine Kearse's catch was the next David Tyree, Victor Cruz, oh, here we go again moment for the Patriots.
It wasn't Victor Cruz. I'm actually just trying to remember who was that caught
Mario
that.
Manningham.
Manningham. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
That it's just amazing how teams just shoot themselves in the foot so many times against New England. I don't know if Belichick mind fucks people, or D Ford going offside, Kyle Shanahan not running the ball, the Seahawks play at the 1-yard line.
What a coincidence. D Ford just happens to be offsides. Who knows? Did anyone listen to the Softy interview today with the handicapper guy? No, I take it.
No, I never got around to it.
It was a little underwhelming, but
was it?
I mean, not for any lack of Softy. Softy kind of grilled him, which was kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, it was basically just the refs were bad in that game, and the handicappers convinced it was thrown. So if you didn't listen to it, no, you didn't really miss much.
Okay.
It was sold so differently.
Yeah, I'm guessing he probably sold it to Softy differently as well.
He was much more adamant about it early in the previous interview, but then when Softy had him on and asked him direct questions like, do you have any actual evidence? He's like, well, not anything beyond what you saw with your own eyes. So
hey, before we get off the Super Bowl and on to Evan's article, can we, I just have to ask, what is your number 1 Super Bowl snack, appetizer, food that you you look forward to around the room? Say it again.
Nachos, absolutely.
Are these nachos you make or that people bring or what?
I'm not a chef. I'm not a artist in the kitchen, Brian. No. No, it changes every single year, but I think nachos are the go-to game food for the Super Bowl. Who's not eating nachos on game day?
Jeff, what do they do in Toronto?
We like nachos too, but I think my group loves fried chicken.
Oh.
We always incorporate some sort of fried chicken, whether it's – we've been big on Popeyes the last couple of years.
I don't know if I can go with you there, dude.
It's a great bulk order. You can get a ton of food for very little, and it tastes great. But we always get chicken wings and nachos, some combination of that. And can't go wrong there.
What about in the Ernst household?
My dad's a big griller, and we don't usually – I don't think we really have many staples, but he's done pulled pork and brisket. He does some – it's not a grill, but he does some baked beans that are always really good. He's done bacon-wrapped jalapenos, a variety of bacon-wrapped things. So there's always something tasty coming off the grill at my house or at my dad's house.
Yeah.
Jalapenos. Ugh.
They're amazing. They're very good. They have flavor, so they're not up your alley. For people who like that kind of thing, they're
damn, I just got owned. Holy cow.
All right, Jeff. Sorry, I had to take us aside there for a second.
My favorite Super Bowl snack is Oreos and apple juice.
Are you shitting me?
No, you know what I'm talking about, right?
No.
Evan took a lot of heat this week on Twitter because he said that was one of his favorite snacks.
Okay, that's a twisting of my words.
Oh, of course, I had to do that.
I said apple juice happened to be in front of me one day, and I happened to experiment by dipping it in apple juice, and it wasn't the worst thing I've ever tasted.
Is that your pre-nap snap or your post-nap snack? Do you get that like after you wake up? How does that work?
Did you then dip it in sugar, like just to complete the whole cycle?
Maybe that's worth trying. Maybe.
It probably would work out.
Yeah.
That's an interesting combination, Evan.
Sorry, I know we're not supposed to troll each other. I know.
Teasing's okay.
Okay. Anyway, one of my big takeaways from Jayson is people starting to use our boy Cable Thanos to get to Russell. He's like the only one who can get a hold of this guy.
Yeah.
That Super Smash Bro game.
Why do you think that is? Like, do you think it's because Russell doesn't want to do interviews because he's too busy, because he doesn't really feel like that's his brand? I'm just kind of curious.
He's unique. I don't know. I think it's probably a brand thing. It's hard to say.
I mean, do other quarterbacks? I mean, Brady has not necessarily done a bunch of interviews, has he? I mean,
Brady does the Monday Night Football thing every week.
He does
right?
this year. That's
no, he's done that for a couple years now.
The Jim
because he was doing it was Larry Fitzgerald for a long time, and
I think Aaron Rodgers is a little private, right? I mean, hard to blame him with all the stuff that surrounded him, but he sat down and did that big interview with Mina Kimes a year or two ago. That was cool.
That was like last year, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious. Like, I don't even know what a tell-all Russell Wilson interview would look like. I almost want to write a parody of that, but then I'd just get trolled by everyone thinking I was being a jerk. It just I don't even know what that would look like.
I bet it would be interesting. I don't know. If you could actually get through to the real Russ who is in there, it'd be pretty interesting. But yeah, he just doesn't seem to have any interest to be anything other than a very polished, corporate-friendly kind of guy.
Yeah. All right, Jeff. Are we ready to talk about Evan's article?
Yeah, sure. So
don't be so excited, man.
I'm still trying to relive
if we have to.
I'm still in the NFC Championship mode. I still want to relive that. But yeah, Evan's article, I edited it. I really enjoyed reading it. If you haven't had a chance, it's still on hawkblogger.com. It really does take a pretty cool look at around the Seahawks offseason. Got a lot of cool insight from Jayson from Over the Cap and some other experts, and really. And did you hear John Clayton commented on it? Did you hear that?
I heard it was in reference to like somebody being cut or something. Was it brief or?
He scoffed at the idea of Mingo being cut.
Okay, what? Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Okay, I love John Clayton, but like I don't know if he's like, I don't want to come across as douchey here, but like I don't think he's super cap inclined. Am I wrong? Like,
I think you're pretty wrong. He's really tuned into the cap.
Really? I think that take is just, I've heard some weird cap takes from him in the past, and I don't know. I need to hear the clip behind like his logic on that.
So Jim Moore brought up your article on Danny David Moore, and he mentioned that there was an article on hotblogger.com suggesting that Mingo and Dixon were potential cap casualties. And he scoffed at both, saying that Mingo plays on every special teams unit and that Dixon was like one of the more valuable players when he played.
I'm willing to go on record right now, 100% guarantee Barkevious Mingo will be cut. 100%. Like there is, and if I prove to be wrong on that, then shame on the Seahawks. Like that guy was terrible this year. He missed so many tackles, and he's costing a decent check. So you're telling me that the team can't go out? I mean, Michael Kendricks was cheaper than him and was 10 times the player. So like that is not where the money should be spent. It should be moved elsewhere on the team. And so if he stays, it's not because John Clayton was right. It's because the Seahawks are wrong.
Let's take a look at that though, real quick. Let's zero in on that. So let's assume that argument is right, whatever, that he was good on special teams. Is his price tag of $5.5 million worth him being somewhat good on special teams? Yes or no to that question?
No.
Thank you. It's not even close.
Yeah.
It's not even close. Like you could cut him and save $4 million. It may have been $3.3 million. But I mean, he's not worth that contract, and he wasn't that good in special teams that he stood out to, I think, everybody and the coaching staff. I could not disagree further with Clayton. I think Mingo is an 80-90% lock on being cut.
Didn't Glowinski just sign a like 3-year, $18 million deal or something like that?
Which is pretty decent.
Something like that.
Yeah, a lot of agents were bashing him.
So like you're like more than halfway to, that annual salary by cutting Mingo. Like you're telling me that I don't know. Like there's a lot of value you can get for $3.5 million in this league. You can probably get 2 good players for $3.5 million if you're wise in your spending. Fluker and Sweezy combined, I believe, this year were less than that.
Yeah.
Like I just think people forget how much you can.
Like $3.5 million is a stud kicker. It's a top 5 kicker. Like I would literally throw that money at Steven Gostkowski. I'd be totally okay with that.
Really? You'd pay for a kicker?
Yes, absolutely.
I think a lot of Seahawks fans are probably with you on that. I'm not.
It's because the cap cost is so minimal. Like we're talking an extra $2.5 million for like a good one. Like the Seahawks NFL teams blow through so much stupid money on stupid risky players. Eddie Lacy, $5.5 million. Like, who was that left guard? Jokel, that we paid $9 million. Like, if you're willing to pay these dinguses like outrageous money, can you at least like pay like an important special teams player who actually puts points on the board, like an extra $1 million or $2 million to get a good one?
I feel like I'm hearing Nathan's John Schneider wheels turning in his head. Who made all those moves?
Yeah, I didn't say anything, but yeah, I mean that's fair.
But you were shaking your head. You would not spend it on a kicker either, right?
No, I mean they had a Pro Bowl kicker in camp that was basically free that they cut, which was dumb. But so the problem isn't investing cap. The problem is talent identification, right? I mean they went with the more expensive kicker this year, and that didn't work out for them. So do better at evaluating kickers and find the cheap ones that are readily available.
I will tell you though, on that front, I totally understood why they made the decision they made. Watching practices and watching those two kick and then watching the games, Janikowski was significantly more reliable, over and over and over again. I don't know what else you can do to make those calls other than younger guy you keep just and hoping a prayer. But knowing what happened last year with Blair Walsh and seeing a guy who was in Myers who was actually missing a lot of kicks in practice and Janikowski who was like sure-footed, I kind of got that one. I wasn't happy about it, but I kind of got it. I'm just admitting that I was way off on that as well.
Just while we're on the topic of cutting players, do you mind if we stop quickly on the Cam Chancellor situation? I think this is a really important topic that a lot of fans, I think it's been kind of flying under the radar because everybody's like, oh, didn't Cam Chancellor retire? Technically, no. Cam Chancellor never submitted his, retirement papers to the NFL. Cam Chancellor has been on PUP the last year. He is currently still a Seahawk, actually. The long story short reason for that is so when Cam Chancellor signed his deal a couple years ago, he had a ton of injury guarantees, and obviously he got really injured in the past year and a half. And if he had submitted his retirement notice to the NFL, when players do that per the CBA, they forfeit any injury guarantees they have in their contract, in their base salary, in their contract. The big deal with Cam Chancellor in 2019 to watch, I think, maybe one of the biggest moves of the offseason. There's not much the Seahawks can really control with this. It's kind of like up to health. But if Cam Chancellor, and this is per the specific language in his contract, let me backstep a little bit. Cam Chancellor has $5.2 million of injury guaranteed base salary for 2019. Okay? So if Cam Chancellor passes a physical at the start of the next league year, that's the specific terminology in his contract. If he can pass a physical, those injury guarantees do not exercise. So he's not that's not protected money anymore because technically, he has an able body who can play football, even though he's not in shape, whatever. But for medical standards, he is able to play. So if he can pass a physical, the Seahawks would be able to cut him pre-June 1st and save $8 million net on the cap from cutting him. If he can't pass a physical, that $5.2 million is Cam Chancellor's money. It's completely protected. So if he can't pass a physical, can't play football per the team doctor, the team doc does it. That's the person who exercises the physical. If he can't pass a physical, that $5.2 million is his. The Seahawks could still cut him, but they would only save $2.8 million. So the difference is $8 million or $2.8 million. That's a big difference in money. That's $5.2 million. Now, the one kind of situation, little side note I do want to mention here is sometimes NFL teams get weird, and sometimes they say, hey, you know what? Or maybe it's not weird, but they say, hey, Cam, you're so important to our franchise that we're just going to turn this money into or we're just going to give the money to you. Like they can just do that. And, maybe the Seahawks do something like that in this situation. But Cam's situation is something to watch this offseason because everybody thinks he retired, rightfully so, but he's not retired. He's still a Seahawk, and his situation has some really big cap implications.
But what's Cam's motivation for trying to pass a physical?
There's not really much motivation because it's, to answer your question, zero, but it's also based on medical standards. So it's not like he's really about him being in shape or condition. It's about him being able to actually play football without, dying or something like that.
So, and do we know if those doctors are independent? Obviously a Seahawks doctor would have good motivation to.
Well, yeah, so that's a great question, and that comes up a lot. They're completely independent. They have oversight. They're not free from complete accountability. They are employed by the Seahawks, but there's no funny business going on with that type of stuff.
I'm sure there would be potential lawsuit implications.
There'd be a grievance from the PA.
This is implications. You can trust the team doctor to make the right decision, is what I'm saying.
Because I think that there can be funny business. It's not really funny business, but when it comes to trades and when players have to pass physicals and stuff like that, a team can trade for someone that they know has an issue and then pass their physical, even though they know they have an issue. I don't think that you're going to see anything like this with a contract situation.
Yeah, what are the odds you're predicting, Evan, that he passes the physical?
Oh God. Honestly, I have no idea because I'm not. This would be a great question for that. Who is it? Pro Football Doc on Twitter or something like that. I have no idea. I have no idea. All I know is it has massive cap implications.
Just speculating, I think that if he could pass a physical, and we're talking again, just like an actual, like straight up, like up and up physical, I think he would have been playing last year.
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason for them to have, for him. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would have set out, and I don't think they would have kept him out if he was cleared to play.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like a kind of injury that would get better.
Yeah, I wouldn't. That's, again, probably, there's a lot of medical stuff there. I had no idea, but no, it doesn't seem like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point. Evan's the first person I've seen report on that information, because when you go over the cap and look at the Seahawks cap, all you see is the dead money that would come off, and you don't see that kind of thing. So even I didn't know that at all. I thought I compared it to Cliff Avrill's situation where he had the neck injury. But
well, it's specific to Cam's contract in terms of his language. I had somebody who has knowledge of his contract tell me that, but that's not the way it is for every single contract. This is specifically Cam's contract.
Okay, so question for you. One of the topics that was going around in the NFL last week is that a lot of teams and agents are expecting all of the top pass rushers on the market to be franchise tagged.
Yeah.
So assuming Clark goes that way, is there any specific names or any people that you still see as legitimate targets if like the Clowneys and Lawrences and Clarks all come off?
Yeah, I think the name that rings a bell is Trey Flowers of the Patriots. He's somebody who I think he had 8.5 sacks in 2018, didn't 100% live up to his potential. He's somebody that, you could pair on the opposite side of Frank Clark, and I really don't think the Patriots are going to keep him, honestly. For some reason, I just have a hard time seeing them pay him. Maybe he gets on them, and he's not under the radar, but I think he's somebody you could get cheaper than, like the Clowneys, the Lawrences, the Ansahs, Frank Clark, whoever the hell else is on the market. I think he's somebody you could get like a notch below, maybe like $5 or $6 million below. If we're talking like, if you want to sign Frank today, I think 20 or 21 per year gets the deal done like tonight. I think you could get Trey Flowers for maybe like 16, 17. I may be way off. I've underpredicted contracts before, but I think you could get him for that price.
The other name that kind of jumped out to me was Preston Smith. Have you done any back work on him? He had like a ton of good pressure numbers, and
yeah, I've heard his name thrown around. I haven't done, admittedly, too much digging into him, but yeah, I mean, he could be an option.
So they can afford Clark and adding like a $15+ million pass rusher. That's right.
Yeah. So yes. This is the thing. When everybody's like, oh, the Seahawks need to extend Bobby Wagner, Russell Wilson, Frank Clark, Jaron Reed, all these big players. Yes, they do. The good news is the Seahawks have a ton of cap space, not only this year, but moving forward also. They're currently projected at like $115 million in 2020. The Seahawks have so much flexibility, and that's not necessarily a good thing because it means they don't have like a ton of high value talent on their roster. But the Seahawks got money to spend, and they can pay Frank Clark, they can pay Russell Wilson, they can pay Bobby Wagner, they can pay Jaron Reed, and probably fit in one other big elite pass rusher in the 17 to 19, $20 million range if they wanted to.
But philosophically, how do you guys feel about that? I mean, I'll even just start. I see free agency as something you use to like finish, like close gaps, like when you have already built a roster that's ready to compete. And I think the Cliff Averill and Michael Bennett signings were perfect examples of that kind of in place. That team needed pass rush, and they went hard after pass rush and free agency. But I don't believe in it as a way to build, your roster too much unless you can really find young second or third tier, players that you believe are going to have upside fit in your system. Like, I don't believe, I guess maybe to be really specific, I'm not a really big believer in buying expensive frontline free agents in almost any situation.
I mean, I'm not against it in the right situations. I don't think Trey Flowers or Preston Smith are the right situations, right? Paying $15-16 million for a 7-sack guy, that's, I think, how you get yourself in trouble really fast. But I mean, obviously there are, exceptions, and, every once in a while, Hutchinson will hit the market, right, and go ahead and pay, that kind of guy or whatever. But I mostly agree with you on that. There's some interesting stuff. There's two things that are interesting about what you just said and Trey Flowers and pass rushers and the Patriots. There's somebody out there that on Twitter that is that has been working on recreating ESPN's pass rush win percentage, which is just how often I'm not sure if it's pass block or pass rush. Anyways, it's how often do you either
It's both.
Is it both? Okay, yeah. I mean, it's two sides of the same coin, right?
Yeah.
How often does a pass rusher get home, or how often does a pass protector keep the quarterback clean? And what they found was whoever was doing this, and I don't remember their Twitter handle. It's a series of numbers, or I'd shout it out. But they found that pass rush win rate is very random, whereas pass block win rate is much more stable. Not super stable, but much more stable than pass rush win rate. So there's that. So I think last time that we were on here, we kind of talked about this, and I said that pass rusher is one where I'd like to see them really address it. But if you're kind of looking at it from that perspective, paying a lot of money for a pass rusher maybe doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, I think Clark and, if you can get Khalil Mack, go get Khalil Mack, that kind of stuff, that makes sense. But again, talking about paying, a significant amount of money for a Trey Flowers or trying to stack your line, through free agency with a bunch of these pass rushing type guys, I don't know if that makes a lot of sense. And you can kind of see that in how the Patriots have gone about their business, right? I think that's one of the reasons why Trey Flowers has a good shot to hit the market, is because maybe the Patriots are already kind of in on this and they're not looking to spend a ton of money on pass rushers. The other thing that the Patriots do that's really interesting in Justice Mosqueda, you can find him on Twitter real easy, has been talking about this, about how the Patriots have taken a different tact to free agency and roster building than basically the entire league, in that they are giving out a bunch of kind of mid-range. By mid-range, I'm talking like maybe 5 to 10 million. That kind of lower end contracts that are lightly or not guaranteed to veterans. And so they're kind of just stocking up on these guys, very little guaranteed, get them in camp, have them compete, keep the ones that are good, and then have that kind of deeper veteran quality roster without, like you're saying, Brian, going out and trying to build a team on a couple big, free agent purchases. So interesting ideas there about how to both address, where you should spend your money in free agency and how you spend your money in agency, kind of looking at how the Patriots do it.
I'm curious if you guys think on the Patriots, like, how many lessons do you really believe we can take from the Patriots? Like, I guess for me, it's like, I think there's only one Tom Brady. I know we had this conversation a little bit before, but I mean, how much does Belichick and Brady, like, their unique abilities allow them to do unique roster building? If the Seahawks took that approach, do you think that they'd get similar benefits? I honestly don't know.
I don't know either.
I think Nathan hit on a really good point that Belichick has been really forward thinking in terms of roster building. And one of the things he's kind of found is a market inefficiency, something the Seahawks can learn from, because they've kind of missed when trying to do this, is swapping down in the draft and picking up veteran players. They've been really, really good at this. And they haven't been a great drafting team historically, which is interesting because that's like the lifeblood of your organization. But they got their left tackle, Trent Brown, in a deal like that, where like they moved down like 10 spots and they got like a stud left tackle for cheap. They got like Kyle Van Noy, one of their linebackers, by doing that. That's how the Seahawks got Coleman a couple of years back. And like, that's a market inefficiency they've really exploited because they haven't drafted well. If you look at Belichick's drafts, they've been very inconsistent. They've missed on like a ton of wide receivers, and they drafted a running back in the first round who's probably the third best running back. And so something like that, where like the Seahawks did really find market inefficiencies early in their tenure. Now they've gotten a little behind the 8 ball in that regard. And I think that more than having Brady and Belichick is what I would commend them in terms of adjusting for roster building.
I think the Seahawks thought they found a market inefficiency in the first round pick trades. And I think that they were very wrong.
I think you're right. I think you're totally right. I think they thought they were figuring out a way to get first round talent that was proven, and figuring out a way, so taking some risk out, de-risking a little bit, and then also not having to pay first round salaries for their rookies, which makes not a ton of sense since you're paying big money in contracts to people like Jimmy Graham and Percy Harvin. But yeah, I agree with you 100% there.
I mean, it wasn't crazy because, you're talking about first round talent, but there's a big difference between top 10 first round talent, where the Seahawks haven't been in a long time, and 20s first round talent. And so I think that they thought that they were doing that, where it's like, look, I'm picking the 20, and I think that they operate. This is why they trade back so much too, right? And this is something that's actually really benefited them. So they're not wrong, right? These late first round picks, they're first round picks, but they're not all created equal. And so they thought that I think they thought that they could trade a first round pick that was a low value first round pick and get hey, it's Jimmy Graham, which, sounded good. And Jimmy was good here and all that. But, for various reasons, they swung and missed. And the cap stuff, I think, is tougher to do than I think maybe they thought it was.
Evan looks like someone just had a dirty sock under his nose.
Just heard a weird comment about a former NFL player on the Seahawks.
I like tight ends that catch like double-digit touchdowns. I'm weird like that. I don't know.
Also, you're excited for Will Dissly to play a full season.
Yeah, he was on pace. Well, I guess he actually was on pace for a lot. So, yeah, I'm excited for Will Dissly's like 20-some touchdown season. That'll be great.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. But so I had a couple of questions. I know I asked Jeff to lead, and then I'm just having all these questions. But so one, I guess, just a point. Pass rushers, can't think of many free agent pass rushers that have changed teams and been day one kind of free agent signings that have been good deals. Like Calais Campbell kind of comes to mind. Like, he wasn't a good deal, but at least he's been a great player.
Yeah.
I think of guys like Olivier Vernon, and like, a lot of guys that just got a lot of money and just are not that good. So I don't know if you guys have examples of other top-notch free agent pass rushers that change teams like come to mind.
Who was the dude the Packers signed like in the 90s?
Reggie White. Come on, man.
Reggie White. How could you forget Reggie White? I forgot his name, but how could you forget him?
I don't know. That was a good point. I don't know what
like a good example for the Seahawks case would be like what the Broncos got from DeMarcus Ware.
That's a good one. But that wasn't top dollar, was it?
Mm-mm.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's kind of what the Seahawks gotta be looking for, like an older player to complement. They had Miller at the time. We have Clark. That's probably the Seahawks' best case scenario for like a free agent pass rusher. But yeah, there's so many examples of guys just like Grant Wistrom,
Patrick Kearney.
Kearney, I think worked out.
He was an NFL Defensive Player of the Year or something, wasn't he?
No,
he had a
14-sack year, but he was.
Quickly.
What's that?
I think he had one good year and then tanked very quickly.
Yeah,
he did. So my second question, and I don't know if anyone's going to know this, but like, so when does the collective bargaining agreement ends? When, like
2021, I think.
So there's 2 more seasons before it's over.
Yeah.
Because I was kind of curious, like, if the Seahawks franchised. So the current agreement is you're franchised twice and then you go to free agency. Is there a chance that if they took a player into the new CBA, that coming out of that CBA, they'd change that rule and, a guy could continue to get franchised? Does that make sense? Or is it like ruled by the current CBA and it doesn't matter what they change it to?
2 things. A player can be tagged 3 times in a row, actually. It's just extremely cost prohibitive. Number 2, Joel Corey, former NFL agent, is super in sync with a lot of executives, a lot of people who are negotiating on the CBA side on both sides, said the franchise tag isn't going anywhere in the next CBA. It is here to stay. So that kind of answers your question.
Well, I wasn't suggesting it would go away. I was kind of wondering if maybe they'd change the rule that would make it possible for teams to just continue. Maybe it wouldn't be prohibitive the third year, and they just keep franchising. Like, could they change the rules on players that have not yet hit free agency? Does that make sense?
I think how players would be grandfathered in would be something that would have to be collectively bargained.
Yeah.
So I think it would depend. But I don't know.
If you guys followed Richard Sherman on Twitter the other night, I don't know if you saw him. That's going to be an ugly negotiation.
I'm surprised that Joel Corey is so confident that the tag's not going anywhere. Is that from a player perspective or an owner perspective?
I think of both.
They both want it. I'm surprised.
Not as in both want it, but as in like owners hold so much power. There's no way that the tag is leaving. And I'm just going off of his word, his credibility. But
yeah,
I can see that.
I wonder if that's smart from an owner perspective, though, with quarterbacks now, almost using that as a weapon. I mean, the Kirk Cousins thing, right? I mean, we've talked about Russ trying to repeat that and stuff like that. So I wonder, I think, Evan, you talked about this in your article, right? That if Russ gets franchised 3 times in a row, that works out to what, $40 million a year or $40 million APY or whatever. So that's not great, I think, if you're an owner. So if more quarterbacks start to go down this route, it's going to potentially inflate quarterback salaries, right?
Yeah, doesn't it make sense to like try to have the players eat their young and like say that players should start trying to put limits on quarterback salaries so the money has to filter elsewhere? It seems like there's such an inequality of where the money goes, and if the players really want more people to get it, they've got to figure out how to not have it concentrated in certain positions. Quarterback being the primary.
My theory is at some point this has to self-correct. Like at some point, paying Matthew Stafford, $45 million a year does not make sense, like relative to cap percentage. I almost feel like at some point the market has to self-correct and NFL teams will eventually stop paying these insane quarterback salaries relative to cap percentage. It's like nobody's forcing the freaking Broncos to pay Brock Osweiler or the Texans to pay Brock Osweiler $19 million a year. Like, you know what I mean? Like, won't this self-correct to an extent?
Sam Bradford just got $20 million to play for the Cardinals, right? I mean, like, but
the Kirk Cousins contract should make people think, right?
Yeah, you would think like after many mistakes have been made, you would think like some teams would, learn from them.
That's one of the worst signings in a long time.
Really?
I don't know.
That far?
We'll see next year.
Because he was bad this year, but like, so was the entire offense for like an entire year. Like, wasn't.
They guaranteed his entire contract.
No, I agree that regardless, it's a bad contract. But didn't they get Gary Kubiak now as their
think so.
Either their consultant or something like that for the offense?
Yeah.
I think that's such a better fit for the Vikings than DiFilippo was. Like that just was like oil and water with Zimmer's philosophy. And I'm kind of curious, like Kubiak, a lot of his stuff takes pressure off the quarterback and might make Cousins. I mean, Thielen had a career year. Anyway, I'm curious. I think to me, Cousins is just I think he's an above average quarterback. I don't think he's that bad. I just think he's not worth all the money he got.
I had another question for Nathan, and it's a philosophical question because Nathan.
I'm really scared right now. I don't know what's coming.
You're actually gonna like this. I'm commending you. Nathan was very critical last year of the Seahawks' approach to free agency since they left themselves short on the comp pick scale. A year later, they're left with 4 picks only. Most of their free agents from last year, the guys were talking about cutting. Now with a lot of players scheduled to hit the market again. You got Earl, you got Justin Coleman, you got the guards. Would you be trying to trend toward the comp pick thing again since they screwed it up last year, or do you think they're in the spot where they got to more think about winning now?
It's a good question because, just talking about how the Patriots do things and signing, some of those mid-level guys and letting them fight it out, but that does have the comp pick implications. Seattle right now, they've got 4 picks, and part of that is because they got no help on the comp picks. And I don't know, I guess. It'll be interesting to see. Last year was kind of a unique year for Seattle, I think, with so many guys going out. And so I think it was a particularly bad year for them to take the approach that they did. This year, they're going to have to. Is Earl's a free agent, right? They're not cutting him.
Yeah,
Earl's a free agent. Frank's a free agent.
KJ Wright is probably going to leave.
Him.
KJ Wright. Those are the big 3.
KJ might get big money somewhere.
Yeah.
Nice.
Earl's your big one probably, and then maybe KJ. We'll see what happens with Coleman, whether he ends up even leaving at all. So, you're really only talking about, 1, maybe 2 decent comp picks. So, this year I think I'm much more comfortable with them taking the approach that they took last year, although less guarantees would be great. I think it was a mistake last year, though.
Evan, what about you?
I was kind of interested, just off of Nathan's note real quick, I was kind of interested to hear Jason's comments about Earl. He thought Earl was going to end up in like the $10 million range, whereas I would go much higher. I think he's going to try and set the market above Eric Berry at like $14 million a year. And in terms of the safety market, 10 and 14 is a big difference. So he obviously said that guarantees would be important for Earl considering the recent injuries in the past couple of years, and that makes sense and everything. But if what Earl Thomas will settle for, is $10 million a year, why haven't the Seahawks signed him now? Like, why haven't they extended him now? To me, that would be such a deal for him.
Because he's going to try to set it at 14, though, right? I don't think Earl's going to settle for 10 now. It's a question of what he settles for after he gets out there and sees the offers.
Yeah, that's fair. And I agree with that. In terms of KJ, I've been kind of shifting my thoughts on him. I actually think he could overperform. I think he could get more money than we think.
Why is that?
I don't know. I think you guys would be surprised to see how much respect he has around the league. I know he kind of lives under the shadows of Bobby Wagner, but that dude's been a stud for us, and I think other teams have recognized that. Especially with his ability to just sniff out defensive plays so quickly, so easily. He has an insane mind, the ability to like foreshadow plays before they happen.
Can I give you a hot take on KJ?
Oh, God, yes.
I can absolutely see him signing with the Patriots.
Ooh, yeah.
He is like exactly the kind of player Nathan was talking about. Veteran, older, not hyped enough to where he's going to get top money, but they'll give him some medium money and he'll be great for them.
It'd be classic Patriots fashion is what it would be.
So would it hurt more for Earl to sign with the 49ers or the Rams?
Rams.
It would be weird to see him go on and win a ring with another team. I don't think the Niners are. I think me and you disagree on this one, Brian, but I don't think the Niners are going to win a ring anytime soon. So,
yeah, well.
Whereas the Rams will be winning one in just a few days, probably.
Or they won't be. They'll be taking that L.
It would be hard to see Earl and Sherm, though, in San Francisco.
I mean, it's not hard if they're winning 2 games a year.
Yeah, but they're going to be last year.
They're going to be good next year.
No, they're not. Stop pretending the Niners are going to be good anytime soon. We don't even know that they have a franchise quarterback, and they paid him like $28 million a year.
All right. I hope you're right.
Not paying Nick Mullins $28 million. What are you talking about?
You're right. My apologies.
I will say, though, we didn't talk much about the championship games, but I really don't like Jared Goff. Like he drives me crazy. He's probably a fine guy, but I just don't like him, and I cheer against him like super hard. And he looked so bad initially, and he made throw after throw. He outplayed Drew Brees in that game. Now I don't think it was as simple as that. I think that Sean McVay outcoached Sean Payton, or at least all the different coordinators. I think Wade Phillips had a better plan for Sean Payton than Dennis Allen did for Sean McVay. But Goff looked solid. He stepped up in a tough situation.
See, I thought McVay had quietly a bad game. The big punt call was great, but if the Saints win on that pass interference, the whole storyline would have been that McVay didn't go for it on 4th and goal, and that they ran on 3rd and 15. It was very Schottenheimer-esque. And I thought Payton, and then once McVay screwed up, Payton screwed up. He didn't run the ball on 1st down on that throw, and they could have ran the ball 3 times in a row, and he kept trying to pass it. And that's the situation where Nathan and Ben would say you're supposed to run. And it's just interesting to see the whole storyline change on McVay, because he was getting roasted on Twitter. And then they win the game, and all of a sudden he was a boy genius. But
Goff, I mean, Goff definitely was. He made a lot of big throws, and it's interesting. My read of that Sean Payton call where they passed on 1st down, that was a I have Drew Brees, maybe the best quarterback or one of the best quarterbacks to ever play. He believes there's a play here. We have a play call we have high confidence in. And Drew Brees dropped back, had a clear pocket, a wide open player, and he threw it into the ground. Like, I don't think you can put that on the coach. Like, you could say, hey, that's the risk you run. And so maybe the risk reward wasn't right. But the play call was good. It was run well by every player but the quarterback. And if he makes that play, they probably win the game. Like, it's tough being a coach. I don't know.
Drew Brees quietly had a bad game.
He did.
Yeah, no one's talking about that.
All right, Jeff. I think we're gonna have to wrap it here. That was a lot of good stuff. I think there's even more in Evan's article that we could get into. I think one of the things we're going to talk about next time, hopefully, Jeff has signed up for, and we're publicly committing him to. We're going to try to do some collaborative articles about some of our top free agents that we're interested in, across the Hawk Blogger crew, and some other stuff like that coming up. And so we'll be back in 2 weeks. That will be 2 weeks after the Super Bowl. Will it be around when free agent? Oh, I guess we'll be getting close to like franchise tag.
Yeah. The combine is the end of February. Yeah. Free agency begins like the 2nd week of March. So I think the first article we're going to come out with is like things we want to see the Seahawks change. I imagine we'll all have very unique perspectives on that. Just all the debate we've had about the passing, running, the Pete Carroll debate. I think the 4 of us all come at football very differently. So I think that's a very interesting article to lead off with. And then we'll get more into the free agency targets once we get a little closer and see the franchise tag players come off. So yeah, Brian's right. Those should be fun, and keep your eye on those, especially the first one coming out. That'll be a really good one, because just you can tell from our show how unique the 4 of us are in terms of the way we view the game.
And the way we view food. But other than that, hey, if you haven't already, please make sure you click subscribe. The show's growing, the channel's growing, it's doing well. Follow Evan at Evan on HB on Twitter, Jeff at Real Jeff Simmons on Twitter, Nathan at NathanE11. I am at Hawk Blogger as always. And if you haven't, try to sign up for Patreon. Become a Hawk Blogger patron. Hawkblogger.com, patreon.com/hawkblogger. $5 and you get a month, and you get into the private Facebook group and can talk more there. So lots of good stuff going on, and it all goes to charity. So folks, thank you for tuning in, and have a great night. Go Hawks.